Hello class and welcome to our next video lesson. Today we'll be looking at adding and subtracting, multiplying and dividing fractions. This is found in two sections of your book, 5.3 and 5.4. They can be found on these pages. Please make sure you're writing down the page numbers. Some of you have not been, I've noticed. So let's get started. Hopefully all of this is review, but you do need to go over this and pay attention carefully because we're going to add this together with solving equations. So you definitely need to pay close attention to this. All right, so adding, here we have, we got three examples with adding. One is the standard adding. To remember when you add fractions, you don't add the denominators, okay? When adding or subtracting, the denominators should not be put together. So you keep this an 8, and you say 1/8 plus 3/8 is 4/8. Now, I have told you this before, I'll say it again, if you get a fraction and it can reduce, you need to reduce it. So the final answer is not 4/8, but 1/2, okay? It is 1/2. All right, next over here we have these fractions. Now, we have a slight problem. Fractions can only be added or subtracted from each other if the denominators are the same. And as you'll notice right here, they are not the same. We need to find what they call as a common denominator, okay? And that's where we use the skills we learned with LCM. That's where this kind of comes in play for us to use. So we're going to use our skills with LCM to kind of put this stuff together. So the LCM for the two denominators would be 15. So I just like to write my 15s like this down here and then put the bars. Now you don't copy down these numbers because we've changed the fraction. So the fraction has to be equivalent. What is an equivalent fraction to 1/5 that has 15 in the denominator? Well, that would be 3/15. What's a fraction equivalent to 2/3 that has 15 in the denominator? 10/15. We add these together, you end up with the wonderful 13/15. It can't be reduced. We are done. Cha-ching, cha-ching. Okay, there we go. Next, example with adding. When you have mixed numbers, you have this option. This is how I recommend to do it. Subtracting and adding, I recommend two different ways. With adding, I recommend that you actually add the whole numbers together, then add the fractions together, okay? So basically, you could rewrite this as 3 plus 7 plus 1/2 plus 3/4. Do you have to rewrite it like this? No, but it is helpful for something we're about to do, and you'll see. So it would be helpful for you to go ahead and do this, at least as an example. You would end up with 10 plus, well, what is 1/2 plus 3/4? Well, I don't know. I got to find a common denominator, which would be 4 in this case. So I end up with 2/4 plus 3/4. This one did not change. This one we found an equivalent fraction that had the same denominator. Ding ding. We add them together. We end up with 10 plus 5/4. I have a slight problem with this fraction. My problem with it is it's improper. And I'm not going to put a whole number, and I'm not going to create a mixed number that has an improper fraction with it. Just can't do that. So what we do is we're going to say I have 10 plus, all that equals over here, 10, so turn that back to a proper fraction, a mixed number, which we've done before. So you end up with 1, and you get 1/4, so 1 and 1/4. So add these together, and your final answer is going to be 11 and 1/4, okay? You know, you can watch this again, pause it, look back over this if this confused you. Just take some time and think about it. Work through a few problems. You're on your own. It might help. Subtracting. Okay, subtracting. So with subtracting, we do the same thing. Make sure they have a common denominator. They do, and we just subtract normally. 2 minus 3. 2 minus 3. So a bunch of you were about to say 1, I bet. A bunch of you were about to look at this and go, oh, it's 1. Nope. It's -1. You're taking away more than you got there, guys. So -1/5. You can have negative fractions? Yes. Yes, you can. Don't freak out. Okay. Moving on over here. Here we have another great example. And you could look at this and easily tell we're going to end up with a negative. You're like, how do you know? Well, look, I've got 1 in a fraction minus 2 in a fraction. Am I taking away more than I've got? Yes, you are. Okay, so let's work through this. Now, when you are doing this with fractions, I highly recommend that you convert it to a actually improper fraction and then try to subtract. It works out 100% of the time. Sometimes you don't have to use that step, but there are times when it's unnecessary to use. It's very necessary to use it. Just my opinion, it just helps us not to get a headache. So convert to improper, merry-go-round this thing. So you end up with 8 here minus, I'm going to put, your 4 is there, but the top numbers have changed because you say 8 times the 1 plus the 7, you end up with 15 on top. 4 times the 2 plus the 3, you end up with 11. So can we subtract as is? No, we must find a common denominator. What's a common denominator for 8 and 4? Well, that would be 8. So we're going to change this, not a wink. This one stays the same, but this one has to become an 8. So up top it has to become 22, okay? After subtracting, you will notice that we end up with 8 stays there, and we're going to have a negative number because we are taking away more than we have, and you end up with negative 7. So our final answer is negative 7 eighths. There you go. All right. That was the adding and subtracting. Let's take a look at the multiplying and dividing with these fractions. All right, so multiplying. Let's take a look at these examples. You guys should like this a lot more. The multiplying is actually easier than adding and subtracting. You just multiply straight across. So you end up with 2 over 15. Done. Just multiply straight across. Do not cross multiply. That's something else entirely. Now, what we can do is we can do something known as cross-reducing. So if you have two fractions like this that you're multiplying together, you can cross-reduce and see, do they have a common denominator? And you divide it by that. So, not common denominator. You can reduce, using GCF. So you see the factor they have in common? 5. Oh, if I reduce this by 5, it would be 5. If I reduce this by 5, it becomes 4. They have anything in common between these two? Yeah, 7 goes into both of them. Goes into this one, whoops, goes into this one 2 times, goes into this one 3 times. Now with your new numbers, you just multiply again straight across. So 4 times 2 is 8, so you end up with 8, and then 3 times 5, again, we get 15, so 8/15. That's our final answer, okay? Next over here we have mixed numbers. Now, you need to convert it to improper. If you don't convert it to improper, a simple 2-step problem turns into a 8-step problem where you're very likely to make a mistake. So don't just try to go and multiply this and say, well, I could do it like this. No, don't try it. If you really want to give yourself a headache, go for it, but it's a whole lot more work. So convert to improper. So that would give us multiply that, you end up with 45 on top with 8 right here, times, multiply that, and you end up with 6 on top with a 5 right here, okay? So now, because this is multiplying, we don't have to find a common denominator, but we can cross-reduce. Anything in common crosswise for these guys? Yeah. 5 goes into this 1 time, while 5 goes into this 9 times. 2 goes into 6 3 times, 2 goes into 8 4 times. Multiply across and you end up with, this is going to equal 27 over 4. Now, I don't want you leaving this as improper for right now, okay? I actually would like for you to turn it to a mixed number. So this would equal, what would it be as? Sorry, my mind was one blank. Yeah, it would be 6 and 3/4, okay? So convert that to a mixed number and you get 6 and 3/4. All right, last we have dividing. We just have last 2 problems right here. Now, even though it says dividing, we're really multiplying. So if you wanted to write that down, it says we are really going to multiply, he. So what you do when you look at an example like this, you are going to take the reciprocal of the second fraction and you're going to change division to multiplication. Don't change the first one. Kind of like when we use add the opposite. We don't change the first guy, we only change the second one. So we have 2 divided by 5 times 4 divided by 3. And once again, we just cross multiply. You end up with 8 over 15. We've seen that number before. I didn't plan for that to happen multiple times, but it did. Cool. Now over here, what you're going to need to do to work out these two is you're going to need to convert them again to improper. So let's do that real quick. You would end up with 11 over 2. Keep this as a division problem. Don't try to do two things at one time. This becomes 22 over 5. Now after you've turned them to improper, now we will convert them. So the first one stays the same. Change it to times. This becomes 5 over 22. Can we cross reduce? Well, yes, we can. 11 goes into this one time. That 11 goes into that 2 times. So you end up with 5 over 4. Okay? So 5 over 4. This converts to the mixed number 1 and 1/4. There you go. And we are done. Again, if you need to go back and look over some of those things, feel free to go back over the video. Come into class prepared to ask questions. We will be working with all 4 of these operations. See you then.